The following program is a podcast1.com production.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
I cried so much, I don't even have any tears left.
26 people killed after a gunman opened fire at a church. At least 20 others injured. Residents of the tight-knit town devastated.
You never think something like this is going to happen close to home.
We cannot put into words the pain and grief we all feel, and we cannot begin to imagine the suffering of those who lost the ones they so dearly loved. Our hearts are broken, but in dark times, and these are dark times, such as these, Americans do what they do best. We pull together. We join hands, we lock arms, and through the tears and through the sadness, we stand strong.
You are listening to The Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. Another tragedy, this time, of course, at this church in Texas, small community rocked, and the assailant, by all indications, who was both mentally unstable, was court-martialed in part for spousal and child abuse. Someone with a court-martial for spousal and child abuse should not be able to get a gun. Period. I'm sorry. But, you know, anyone out there who's an NRA person who disagrees with me, bring it on. This is ridiculous. Now, I'm the first one to say, after, you know, a tragedy like this with so many innocent people gunned down, that the left is politicizing. And believe me, we're going to get into how they are, in an obscene fashion, both criticizing the prayerful. I mean, you could almost say some of these freaks are criticizing them for being in church. Okay, now I'll get to that. But when you look at this, and I've decided I'm not going to use his name. I'm not going to dignify him by being identified on this show. But this is an individual who was clearly mentally disturbed. Another man who was in the depths of depression. I don't know if he was on any, Elisa looked that up, if he was on any antidepressants. A lot of these people, like Dylan Klebold, these other kids are on antidepressants. He's not a kid, he's an adult, but you know what I'm saying. They're on this Prozac or something. And there are problems with that too. But the fact that he was able to buy weapons with a court-martial, if indeed he had bought them before the court-martial, after the court-martial, that's a problem. Now, I think someone like this individual would be able to carry out mass carnage in another capacity if he had been prevented from getting a weapon, a gun. I have a feeling, and you never know, but if he's going to go to the trouble of putting on tactical gear and dressing up like this, you know, this evil force and this reliving his military, whatever he was doing, then he probably had the wherewithal to go on the internet and build a bomb. My sense is. But the fact that he could have killed people with a truck or a bomb doesn't mean this individual should have been able to purchase weapons post-court-martial for spousal abuse. I'm sorry. I have a real problem with that. Now, it's not, is it a criminal conviction? It's in the military court system. But individuals also can lie on their background check form. They can lie, and apparently he did. There must be a way to properly search files. In the era of supercomputing, we should be able to check files. Okay, he was court-martialed. He was discharged from the military, and the accusations against him for spousal and child abuse were serious enough to require that he be ejected from the U.S. military.
Before he purchased this gun, he did seek to get a right to carry permit in the state of Texas and was denied that permit in the state of Texas.
That's good.
It was after that he was able to buy this gun. And what we do know is that under a federal law, someone who is dishonorably discharged, as this person was, is not authorized to be able to buy a gun.
Well, isn't but did. So this is where Republicans and Democrats can come together on this issue. This has to be completely tightened up. I know they want to go for the assault-style weapons, and that's what they wanted to do after Vegas. By the way, we still have unanswered questions about Vegas. I love how everyone just forgets about Vegas. There are all these people who end up dead. People are dead post-Vegas who were involved in the Vegas, shooting. People just end up dead. Like lawyers there's some weird stuff happening from Vegas. But in this scenario, this has to be tightened down. Tighten this down. This whole thing is absurd. But as usual, in a place like Texas, you carry out, this horrific act against innocents, and there'll probably be someone nearby with a gun. And there was indeed an individual who had a gun across the street who decided, this ain't going to happen in my town.
I did what I thought I needed to do, which was they said that there was a shooting. I pursued, and I just did what I thought was the right thing.
There were more weapons in that car. You possibly stopped them from killing other people.
I didn't know that.
Well, it looks like he actually, when the neighbor, and please give me his name, guys, because I'm in the middle of this, so give me the neighbor's name. The neighbor...
his name was Johnny Langendorf.
So when he shot at the assailant when he was going into the... Because the guy was shooting outside the church. Then he went in and kept shooting. A neighbor grabbed the gun, and we're still learning the timeline here, but ended up shooting him. Looks like he wounded him. And then we don't know if he shot himself in the vehicle. He obviously knew he was being pursued, but they all chased him. Chased him down. And he ended up dead. So just like the Vegas killer, this guy ends up dead. He said, I just want to move back to Texas. He said something along the lines of, but Texas isn't much better. Pretty much said he didn't like Texas. Oh, no, a friend of his said, I just want to move back to Texas on Facebook. And then he said something along the lines of, Texas isn't any better. Pretty much said he didn't like Texas. I think he had a kid, and he's still a baby. He was married, but I don't know to whom. It's crazy to think I grew up with him, same town, same school, same classes. He was different in school and creeped me out, but never thought he would do such a thing. A former friend on Facebook wrote, it's scary to think that I knew this psychopath. He had been in my house. I was actually friends with him. And I literally would stay the night at his place when we were kids. I ended up distancing myself from him in high school after he got into an argument with me in school, and he tried punching me several times. Dude was a crazy man. The individuals who did get to know him, they all seem, it's unlike other instances where he's like, oh, he seemed like a normal kid. Pretty much not many people are saying that about him. So he clearly had mental health issues from the time he was young. Interesting that person could actually be in our military at all. 855-40-LAURA. Your thoughts on this? When you saw this play out and the heartache from having a 5-year-old killed all the way to a 72-year-old killed. 26 people dead. I think, I have to say, when I'm in Mass, I think about this sometimes. I've thought about this. What if someone comes in the back door? I mean, there's obviously no security, and you think of people in church services in the Middle East, in Egypt, where the Coptic Christians had been killed in church services during Mass. Priests have been beheaded during Mass, exploded in the Middle East. And you think, I mean, sometimes I do think, where are the exits? I always look for the exits in a room. I mean, isn't that weird? Like, I always think of this because I think, how can you get out? You're a sitting duck in there. All you have is a wooden church pew. But I've actually thought about this. And I was leaving Alabama because I was down there for 24 hours, less than 24 hours, for the Alabama LSU game with Maria and Chris and I went. And when this broke, your heart breaks for the people of this community. It's just a complete. There are no words, and the depravity and the evil. Another thing worth noting about this is that he seemed, by all accounts, Facebook postings, to be rabidly atheist. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone who's an atheist ends up being a killer or a criminal. That is not what I'm saying. But it perhaps is relevant in that he chose a church to carry out this attack. And I bet, once you start looking into this guy's background, I bet, and this doesn't excuse anything, that when he was younger, he was badly, badly hurt by somebody. Somebody did something to him. And I don't know what it was, but I guess he could have just been born evil, I guess. But I bet by the time we finish this profile of him, it will likely be the profile of someone who himself was subjected to some type of abuse. That's my sense. And Trump is right. We do have a mental health problem in this country that, when mixed with the internet and the ability of individuals to get all jacked up by things they're reading on sites, by violent images and video games and Hollywood, they get ramped up. And maybe they're on antidepressants, maybe they're on some type of medication, and they already have problems. Different from 20 years ago when individuals, plenty of evil, screwed up individuals 20 years ago, but what they didn't have is this pipeline into groups, chat rooms, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, where they're connecting up with other deranged, screwed up, evil people with violent tendencies. That is what I see happening. And they have an ability to encourage each other. They're loners, except they have this false reality that is, it's kind of perpetuated, with this internet connection. So they're alone. They're really, in their mind, they're loners. They're total loners. But then they can be somebody on the internet. They can be someone on the internet. And so they're not alone. They're not alone in their depravity or in their psychopathic tendencies. And they're on the internet and suddenly, there are other people like me. And they say, oh, wow, this is how you do this. This is how I'm no one now, but wait until after I do this. Everybody will know my name. Everybody will know who I am. There's a lot in here, a lot in this story to examine, to understand, to, I think, pray about, cry about, be enraged about. But I will say that the good and the strong emerge when evil attacks. The good and the strong. And this neighbor, Stephen Wilford, who managed to shoot this domestic terrorist of a mass shooter, he grabbed his gun and he's like, ain't gonna happen here. I don't care if I lose my life. I'm going to take this guy down. And he did shoot him. Who knows what this guy would have done? He's clearly, when he heard that he was being shot at, that's when he got out of the church. All those people could have been dead. And he had other weapons in the car. 855-40-LAURA. Your reaction to this horrific tragedy. The left is demanding immediate ban on any AR assault-style weapon. They use the word assault because one trigger pull is 2 buttons. One trigger pull, get 2 bullets, but it does allow for a larger, capacity. But it's an AR-15 type weapon. It's one of the weapons they have. I mean, I think that will do almost nothing to prevent carnage in the United States. But this is where they're going. And they say if you don't agree with this, then you might as well pull the trigger yourself. This is where we are in this country. 855-40-LAURA. Your reaction. I especially want to hear from law enforcement and anyone who has been involved in the mental health arena. I want to hear from you. Do you agree with me that the loneliness, the desperation of the depressed and those who have their own mental health issues connected to the internet, jacked up in these social media settings, that this is creating, in part, a pockets of real violence in this country? 855-40-LAURA. Thanks to my wonderful sponsors and your support, I'm glad to say that we can provide this podcast at no cost to you at all. As a loyal listener of my program, please consider testing our sponsors because they're the ones who actually cover the cost to produce this daily show. So if you're a dog lover like I am, how about giving your dog, your best friend, a fresh, healthy, and nutritious diet? When dogs eat well, they live longer and happier lives. I'm here to tell you about NomNomNow.com, which cooks the world's best dog food. It's made fresh in the USA and delivered right to your door every week. Nom Nom Now's customized recipes cook fresh in our kitchen, delivering healthy nutrition you can actually see. Switch to Nom Nom Now and your dog will have more energy, a shinier, softer coat, and a longer, better life. Nom Nom Now really is the best food for your best friend. And right now you can save 50% on your first 2 orders of fresh, healthy dog food when you use my code Laura at NomNomNow.com. That's code Laura and save 50% on your first 2 orders. NomNom now.com. and code word LAURA. All right, let's go to Mark in Virginia, line 2, here on the Laura Ingraham Show. Remember Ingraham Angle tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern Time. It's going to be a fantastic show. We're going to unpack all of this. We have a lot of political news we have to get to as well. Mark.
Yes, ma'am. I'm a career law enforcement retired. Teach concealed carry for a number of years to civilians. And I'm telling you, and I'm an FFL holder in Virginia. I've got a small gun shop, and I'm telling you there is no way that man shouldn't be able to get that gun. And my understanding is he was bounced out of the military and then bought it after that. That's the reporting I've heard. So with the background check, the way we've had it rigged in Virginia, it's electronic. It's just about instant. There is no way that man should have gotten guns. And the other point I want to make is, where were the guns in the church? And I know I'm a chairman of deacon in my church. It's a small church. It's about the size, I think, of the church that was victimized here. And I carry every Sunday, and there's more than one person in my congregation that carries. The pastor knows about it. We have plans for this kind of thing. And it just saddens me that the carnage was as great as it was. Because, Laura, I'm telling you, that could have been minimized every time.
Someone's carrying inside the church.
Shooting. That's exactly right. And every time we have this situation come up, and I teach about it in my concealed carry classes, when these people are cowards. And so when you have use of force or show of force against these folks, it always...
Well, look at what he did. Mark, look at what he did. When that neighbor starts shooting at him, he goes running like a little baby, jumps in his car, and then he crashes dead. But that neighbor came out. He's like, I'm taken down. He starts shooting. He runs away. He gets in the car and speeds away. Hey, I love that call. Keep them coming. 855-40-LAURA.
It's all in your mind.
I think that mental health is your problem here. This was a very, based on preliminary reports, very deranged individual. A lot of problems over a long period of time. We have a lot of mental health problems in our country, as do other countries. But this isn't a guns situation. I mean, we could go into it, but it's a little bit soon to go into it. But fortunately, somebody else had a gun that was shooting in the opposite direction. Otherwise, it would have been as bad as it was. It would have been much worse. But this is a mental health problem at the highest level. It's a very, very sad event. These are great people, and a very, very sad event. But that's the way I view it.
I think Trump's response was fantastic. I think he was right on point. And the left is going crazy on him today. Of course, he's over in Japan when he made that statement. Oh, how dare he say that? He was jumping to the conclusions about the truck attacker last week and said, look, we should change immigration law. She didn't have this. Well, that's kind of an obvious, the diversity visa deal with the Uzbeki who decided, well, okay, jihad seems pretty good, and he's in the United States, just runs a bunch of people over. It's pretty obvious that diversity visa, both Democrats and Republicans are now criticizing that. They want to get rid of it. So that was just, that was like, hold up your hand. There's a hand in front of my face. That was obvious. In this case, we have a lot of different circumstances that need to be looked at carefully, and we have to discern the right answer, if any answer. Like in some cases, there is just evil. You can't prevent all evil. But a good person with a gun can often, not always, but often save lives. That's just a fact. I'm going to be hitting this issue tonight on the Ingraham Angle. You want to tune in because we're not going to just talk about what happened yesterday. We're going to remind you of what has happened before and the good that has come out of evil and how evil, in some cases, cannot be prevented. But in that case, what do you do? I mean, you could try to round up how many guns, at least in the United States? 80 million, something like that? It's a huge amount. You could try to round up every gun. Have a national gun registry. I'm sure that'll prevent someone like this guy from ever getting a gun. No, because he can build a pressure cooker bomb in his garage. Pressure cooker bomb. You think he was too stupid to do that? I don't think so. Any one of you listening right now could have done the same thing with the pressure cooker bomb. Kill a lot of people. If you want to kill people, you are going to kill a lot of people. Oh, how dare I say 80 million? Almost it looks like 300 million weapons in the United States. Confiscate them all? The left, a lot of the people on the left say they don't want to do that, but of course they do. By the way, we also have Donna Brazile news. She's telling her critics to go to hell. The Clintons are on a total search and destroy mission with Donna Brazile because she's revealing exactly what Hillary Clinton was trying to do at the DNC. Well, of course, run the whole thing and rig the election. And meanwhile, Wilbur Ross, the Commerce Secretary, had an investment that was invested in part in Russia. Well, by the way, if you have a 401k plan, you probably have one too. This whole thing is the most ridiculous situation. But all these leaks are coming out of Mueller's office. Another issue we're going to get to today. The NBC News yesterday has an article about how they are about to indict Mike Flynn, General Flynn. Leaks from the investigation, which is a crime. It's a federal crime for prosecutors to leak information out of the grand jury investigation. I went back and put my legal hat on yesterday. I was reviewing all my old stuff on the grand jury because I was a white-collar criminal defense attorney. You just can't do that. If you're a witness and you testified before the grand jury, you can go out and say anything you want as a witness. But as someone who's doing the investigation, you have no right to speak about it. And you can actually be prosecuted. So somebody should be prosecuted out of Mueller's office. All right, joining us now, Byron York from the Washington Examiner. We have a lot to get to with him. The left is absolutely on a tear against Donald Trump today for being the poodle of the NRA. And meanwhile, we have this new news, unsurprising to me, who coined Clush 2016. What difference does it make? Jeb and Hillary, I said, should have run on the same ticket. And once, I hate to say, was I right about it? Yes, I was, because all the Bushes, it looks like, voted for Hillary. Joining us now, Byron York. Byron, how you doing, my friend?
Hi, Laura. Thank you. Good to be here. And you know what we ought to be doing is singing the praises of Stephen Williford and Johnny Langendorf, those two guys in Texas who grabbed the gun, shot the shooter, and engaged him in a high-speed chase. And if the shooter had any plans of making doing any more violent deeds, they were really interrupted by Williford and Langendorf.
No, those guys were. Well, this happens a lot in the United States, not in a mass shooting context, but an individual who is armed and who knows how to use a weapon safely, merely brandishing a gun in a home invasion situation. Usually the attacker just leaves and runs, and it prevents a home invasion or any type of violent act. But in this case, they were just good neighbors, and they stepped in and said, and without a doubt, that guy would have killed more people. Well, there's no question about it. Who knows if the law enforcement even would have been able to get him that quickly?
And he dropped his gun when he was fired at.
Coward.
By a civilian nearby who had a gun.
Yeah, well, total coward. The left is going bananas because they say, well, Donald Trump, he was immediately last week calling for changes to diversity visas after the truck attack by the Uzbek, but now he's like, it's just mental health. We're not going to do anything on guns. How do you see that?
Well, first of all, the Second Amendment is in the Constitution. There's been a big Supreme Court case about it, that it protects a personal right to bear arms. And the diversity visa is not in the Constitution. It's a particularly bad piece of policy that started in the 1990s, and a lot of people have wanted to get rid of it ever since. So I just don't see these as being the same thing.
This was Harold Ford Jr. tonight today on Morning Joe. Let's listen.
Shame on the president for shame on the president for a lot of things, but on this more to be overseas and to say we care about these people and this is terrible what has happened, but this just mental health is the problem.
Well, and to say mental health,
that only is the problem. The commonality in all of this is one thing: an assault weapon. If you keep guns out of the hands of people who are mentally ill, at least we can prevent innocent people from being killed.
His point on this was the assault. You cut it too short, James. The assault weapon is what the problem is, and they were criticizing Trump for just talking mental health because you have to get the gun. Those types of guns shouldn't be sold.
Well, that is always, how hard that has always been. They tried this in the 1990s with certain types of guns, certain designs of guns. I mean, it's been extremely hard. I have to tell you personally, I don't have a problem with some of these measures that have been proposed, magazine size, for example, but it's not going to solve the problem of this guy who snaps and goes shooting in the church.
Well, what we know is individuals with the wherewithal, the mindset to kill, as we saw with the Tsarnaev brothers, they didn't need a gun. They needed an internet connection, and in short order, they were able to build pressure cooker bombs. And this individual clearly could have done that. So he was going to commit some type of carnage, and he happened to use weapons. It looks like the individuals in the church included, the congregation included his old in-laws, but they weren't there that day. It looks like there was some, his ex-in-laws, the rage and the mental illness and all of it combined, the spousal abuse, maybe he feels like he was wrongly court-martialed and he was set up, in the mindset, it was all a setup and I'm going to get them now. I mean, there's something that he would have done with or without a weapon, clearly. Maybe he wouldn't have been able to kill that many people. We never know.
Well, that's true, but here again, in this case, after a horrible amount of damage was done, you did have a citizen who was armed be able to step in and stop it before police arrive. So you got to be thankful for that.
Well, Byron, I want to move on to talk about some of these political issues at the same time that are bubbling up. First, let's talk about the Bushes and their revelation that HW voted for Hillary, which to me it didn't surprise me for 1 millisecond.
No.
And did W vote for Hillary as well? Or he
I
didn't
believe
say?
George W. Bush said he voted for none of the above, indicating that he did not vote for either Trump or Clinton.
Oh, how brave. So he didn't vote for anyone, he claims. HW voted for Hillary. Jeb, McMuffin. Maybe Jeb voted for McMuffin. I have no idea. But this proves what many of us have been saying about the global establishment within the Republican Party that they have much more in common with Democrats than they do with the grassroots of their own party. So much so that they are mouthing the same platitudes about the president and mouthing the same platitudes about the issues, immigration, trade, etc. But this just again, I keep saying this is the good thing about Trump. Everybody's cards are on the table. You can't any longer pretend that you're with the grassroots and you're a Republican of law. No, you're not. And now everybody knows it. I find this to be very clarifying. It's a political astringent.
It is, and this over the weekend I did a tweet storm, just 6 tweets.
Oh, I saw your tweets. I retweeted you.
And they were kind of, yes, you did. Thank you. They were kind of like a Twitter version of Chapter 4 of Billionaire at the Barricades, and it was just. And the thing is that we now have 2 examples here. We have this George W. Bush interview with the new book, in which he criticizes Trump, attacks Trump, and then we have the speech that he gave in New York City recently, in which he did not mention Trump by name. It was pretty clear he was talking about Trump. And in both cases, I mean, especially one in the book where he says he believes that he might be the last Republican president, in both cases he does not seem to be willing to confront the damage that he did to the Republican Party, and we all know the bill of particulars here. A major war in Iraq started essentially by mistake, a devastating economic collapse at the end of his second term, job approval that was in the 20s by the end of his presidency, which means he's lost not only the other party, not only independents, but a lot of Republicans as well. And it was that performance that made it impossible for a Republican to succeed him. Now, say what you want about John McCain, there was no way a Republican was going to win after George W. Bush. Paved the way for an across-the-board Democratic takeover, leads to the first filibuster-proof Democratic majority in the Senate since Jimmy Carter, and one result of that is what? Obamacare. So these are far-reaching failures that did enormous damage to the Republican Party, so much so that in the next primary, 2016, the Republican candidate wins the Republican primary by trashing the last Republican president.
Well, I think and the only one who I think really could have done what Trump did is the man who would say, okay, let's be honest about what's happened. I tried to get Romney to do that in 2012, and he wouldn't touch it. He's like, oh, I can't criticize the Bushes. I'm like, okay, well, I tried. He came close. But then he basically did the whole I support the Afghanistan, Iraq, He wouldn't take on the Bushes. He wouldn't do it. It had to be done. Byron,
somebody from outside the party structure.
Yes, exactly. Someone had to just come in and say, okay, I'm just going to tell you what's really going on. And Byron, this tax plan, the more you look into it, the tax reform is just going to raise certainly my taxes, and even middle class people who get a break are going to have it sunset in 2024.
Yeah. But I will say one thing: this tax plan is a work in progress.
Yeah, it's going to change.
It's still going to change.
No, it's a nightmare. We'll have you on TV this week, Byron. We had a way too short of a segment on Friday. I'm just getting my feet wet. So give me a break if it's not exactly the way it should be.
But it was still fun.
Yeah, see, we still had fun. Byron York, one of my absolute favorite people. Period. We'll take a break on the Laura Ingraham Show. When we come back, D.C. might be considering taking down statues, but guess what? They're erecting a new one. I'll tell you who. Don't go away. Okay, here is what I can tell you. The council member for the District of Columbia, Ward 7, that's just a section of the city, Vince Gray, said he expects the D.C. City Council to be in unanimous support of installing a new statue in D.C. for Marion Barry, the long-serving mayor and crack-smoking, as it says in the American Thinker, whoremongering, tax-cheating mayor. Whoremongering, I haven't read that since As You Like It in Shakespeare. Whoremongering, tax-cheating. He's the embodiment of the progressives in D.C., so I guess it does make sense. Out with the military heroes of yore, and in with the crack-smoking, whoremongering, tax-cheating Marion Barry. Perfect example of what progressives love most. Perfect. It makes perfect sense. By the way, you need to go to LauraIngraham.com and Facebook. Watch my Ingram Angle segment from Friday on the Ingram Angle show on Fox. I trace Hugh Hefner's ascendancy in the porn world all the way up to the present day, and how we have this explosion of sexual assault and deviancy in the United States. You're not going to want to miss it. Go to our Facebook page and LauraIngraham.com.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
Why would you do this to people like that are just praying? They're just worshiping. Why would you attack them on something on a Sunday when they're defenseless?
I think that mental health is your problem here. This was a very, based on preliminary reports, very deranged individual.
You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. The carnage on Sunday at a church in Texas outside of San Antonio, a small rural community. About 1,000 people live in this town, and so of the 26 victims and 20 others injured, pretty much everybody in the town knows someone who was in that church. A lot to unpack. We'll do it together also on the Ingram Angle tonight, 10 p.m. Eastern on the Fox News channel. The fact that the left decides to, in some of these hideous social media postings, the left decides to hit and criticize people who said they are praying for the victims. Innocent people go to church on Sunday to honor their God, and while doing so, they get shot and killed. What country? America. Why? Republicans. That's Chelsea Handler, that totemic genius of the entertainment industry. I'm sick and tired of thoughts and prayers for mass shooting victims. This is Never Trumper, Max Boot, who's a so-called conservative, but he despises Donald Trump. What we need, legislation and regulation. Start with assault weapon ban. Can always count on him. What they, the future victims, really need is for Hill Republicans to find courage to stand up to the NRA. Again, Never Trumper, Max Boot. Goes on and on. Joy Reid. The NRA is soaked and bathed in blood. How do its adherents sleep at night? Well, Joy, after watching some of your commentary in recent years, I kind of asked the same question of you. I have some thoughts and prayers for Speaker Ryan. I think that your cynical acquiescence to this rot in the service of greed is shameful. I have a question for these people. What do they ever have the same outrage and consternation and the desire for regulation when it comes to another constitutional amendment, First Amendment? They never want to draw any connection between the pornified, depraved culture in Hollywood, where the most grotesque types of violence and sexual deviancy is highlighted and glorified, celebrated, becomes even comedic at times. From the mommy porn of 50 Shades of Grey all the way to so-called network television right in Family Hour, where we see promos for 10 p.m. shows where people end up with their throats slit in the back of in the trunk of a car, or absolutely disturbing scenes of child mutilation, abuse, other images in other mediums like Netflix that show Stranger Things, odd, twisted, demonic. I don't think Hollywood ever said, well, you should be ashamed. Well, Christians across this country, people of deep faith, people who are worried about what's happened at every level of society to our children and their understanding of themselves, intimacy, relationships. Christians for years have been saying, hey guys, yeah, of course there's a First Amendment, people, but can't we do better than this? Can't we can have great drama, and yeah, you can have, there's all violence in life. You can have violence, but my God, now it's so twisted, it's so dark. Do they ever take responsibility for that? Of course they don't. No, because they're Hollywood. They make a ton of money off this stuff. The more depraved, the more money. We had a situation last year, the year before, where the Today Show was actually doing this whole segment on moms and their daughters reading 50 Shades of Grey together. They were celebrating that. Remember, that was a sadomasochistic relationship a woman had with another man that then became her obsession and ended up, for her, being very fulfilling and twisted, et cetera, et cetera. International bestseller. And spawned 50 Shades Darker, darker. Darker and darker and darker and darker.
And a movie franchise, too.
Oh, but all I'm saying is people come out of the culture. So I guess if you find the votes and you want to ban assault-style weapons, okay. Are you going to solve this problem? I don't think so. This individual, whose name will not be mentioned on this show, had the wherewithal and the mindset to kill a lot of people. He would have done it in some other capacity, I bet. And maybe it wouldn't have been so many, maybe it would have been more. We don't know. But he is someone, yes, who shouldn't have gotten a gun because he was actually court-martialed for spousal abuse. Should not have been able to get a weapon. He lied on his background check. I agree, that all should be tightened up. That's fine. And it should be done, and it's serious. But the idea that Hollywood is going to lecture us about morality in the wake of a mass shooting? I mean, blood on their hands. They have an entire generation's twisted view of sexuality and intimacy on their hands. Complete nightmare that Hollywood and the entertainment complex, multi-billion dollar industry of twisted depravity. And they they would never take any blame. No. Why should they? Why should they? They have the right political views. So they hate Trump. As Keith Olbermann said, Trump's worse than bin Laden. What an idiot. Complete moron. Failed at sports broadcasting. Fired multiple times, which in and of itself, I'm not, I was fired a couple times. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. But nevertheless, fired multiple times, had great talent in sports, decides to just be an angry political pundit. No, it turns out nobody wants to hear him as a political pundit. No one wants to hear Keith Olbermann. But Keith Olbermann, Trump's worse than bin Laden. Again, one of the great values of Donald Trump. We now know where everybody stands. I love that. We love that Keith Olbermann. I've been saying this for years. The left is more afraid of Christian conservatives and Trump supporters than they are of ISIS. I've said this for years. Earlier I said Al-Qaeda before ISIS. They're much more afraid of them. Why? Why are they more afraid of them? Holds up to mirror to their own lives. What have you been doing? Who are you? What choices have you made in life? They want no accountability. Zero.
You said recently via tweet that Trump and his family have done more damage to America than bin Laden and ISIS combined.
Yes.
Do you believe that?
Yeah, we did really well after 9/11. I don't think the country has given itself enough credit for what we did not do after 9/11. We did not restrict all of the freedoms in this country. We did not single out people. We did not destroy the fabric.
The follow-up was whether, you actually, is that true? You think you're more afraid of Donald Trump? And he said yes. That's the bite I played on Friday during one of my back and forths. He's asked, you said this, and he said, yes, that's what I think. He's more afraid of Donald Trump than he is ISIS, et cetera, et cetera. That's the key part of that. Newsflash to Keith Olbermann. The country's always divided. The country's so divided. The country's always divided. Now we have the internet and social media. Everyone's like, here's it 24/7. It's always divided. The only time it wasn't divided, Craig Shirley is right. It was right after World War II, during part of World War II, in the aftermath, and for a couple months after 9/11. That's it. We're divided. Divided since Roe versus Wade. Supreme Court decides you have a constitutional right to murder your own child. Constitutional right. That's what the founders were all about. Kill your own offspring. That's in the Constitution. Well, we're really divided about that still. 42 years later. 43 years later. We're divided. We're divided on affirmative action. We're divided on issues of, social mores. We're divided on military interventionism. We're divided on a lot of topics. Divided on immigration. Although less divided, I think, than the establishment believes. But this idea that the religious people who are reaching out in prayer to the victims are part of the problem, which is what these Hollywood people are saying, again, this is what we've come to expect. This is what we've come to see from the hateful left. 855-40-LAURA. And then other really dumb comments. There are no background checks on these long guns in Texas. What an idiot. Alyssa Milano. Oh, okay. Not true, of course. The murdered victims were in a church. If prayers did anything, they'd still be alive, you worthless sack of blank. All those attacking Paul Ryan who said, we are praying for the victims. The killer was an atheist, avowed atheist. And he celebrated atheism and advocated for atheism. Doesn't mean that all atheists are prone to violence, but he had an empty, dark heart. And someone with an empty, dark heart going to do bad things to himself, herself, or other people. I've got to say, for 1 millisecond, did any of you think this was a woman who did this? Chris and I were going to the gym, and I said to him, for not 1 second do we think it's a woman. He's like, you're absolutely right. Women don't do this. I'm sorry. I mean, I don't know the last time a woman did anything like this. This is a guy thing. I'm sorry, and I'm going to sound like a raging feminist here, but the men, you just take one look at him, though. You look at that face of his. He looks like a complete freak. So the whole look of him looks demonic, but he would have done something else. How about the hero neighbors? Took after him, brought their long guns. They shot him. They hit him. And when he started hearing that bullets coming his way, like all cowards, he dropped his weapon, got in his car, and tried to speed away, ends up crashing dead. It looks like he died of the gunshot wound that the neighbor hit him with. And it's not clear yet. If there's an update, Elisa, let me know. But I don't think yet we know about this. So we'll keep examining this. But my sense here is the more prepared you can be, and sometimes there's just no way to be prepared. You're bowing down in prayer. You don't know if someone's coming in the back of a church. If he had a security guard there, this guy would have taken out the security guard. One security guard versus an individual who has a will to kill, not going to do much in most cases. So he comes into the church, they're praying. Maybe they're singing, maybe they're listening to the pastor. Pretty hard to react quickly unless you have tactical military training. And you're carrying, and you kind of have your hand right near your gun. I mean, you're drop and roll, but this guy just unloaded. It's a lot like in the Las Vegas shooting. He was shooting from above. They're at a concert. You didn't know where it was coming from, and they were kind of sitting ducks there. Same thing in this situation. Although I do know a lot of people who carry at mass. And if you're in Virginia, no problem. No problem. You get a right to carry, and you'll be able to, if you're not, you say somehow in Virginia it seems like they do a better job of the background checks. I'm not sure what happened here, but I know a lot of people who carry at mass. Do you know anyone who carries going to church or at a theater? Same thing. I'd rather be prepared. That's my sense. I mean, you have a better chance of surviving if you're prepared, but still might not survive. 855-40-LAURA, your reaction to this and a lot more. The Democrats going for the guns. Trump says mental health. This guy shouldn't have been able to get a weapon after spousal abuse and child abuse. Most of these killers have done some type of abuse, have shown some type of abusive behavior, self-mutilation, spousal, child mutilation, or animal mutilation. Again, dark, depraved hearts. Don't go away.
Pray for peace. Please pray for peace.
We just did what we do. We prayed. And, you know, the Bible tells us that we overcome evil with good. And not evil doesn't overcome evil. Evil can only be overcome by good. And so we come together to do that immediately.
Now we have Southern Baptist churches getting shot up again. Had it been a radical Islamic terrorist with a beard named Muhammad,
that's easy.
That Washington would be melting down right now.
You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. The cable news crowd rushing to condemn Trump, I guess because he didn't come out within minutes to say that all AR-15 should be banned in the United States. They're criticizing him and others for focusing on mental health. They're criticizing. This is what they're going to do. Meanwhile, of course, the Democrat Party is just being completely exposed for the internal corruption, the cancer within the party known as the Clintons. Hillary Clinton wanted to pre-wire this election in 2016. She didn't want to leave anything to chance. And Donna Brazile blows the lid off this in her new book. And so what are they doing to her now? Their old pal. Oh, they're it's the politics of personal destruction. Donna Brazile's the problem. And so Donna Brazile now says to her critic, go to hell. Greg Abbott's going to be joining us, the governor of Texas, the latest on this shooting. And do you carry a weapon in a theater, public places where you're allowed to do so, even church, because you always want to be prepared? Do you? Will you? Don't go away. Did you know that nearly 29 million Americans have diabetes? This November is National Diabetes Awareness Month. If you have type 2 diabetes, you're at risk for complications, including an increased risk for heart disease. Many people with diabetes are 2 to 4 times more likely to have a heart attack, heart failure, or stroke, or even die. Please talk to your doctor about screening for diabetes and heart disease. You can learn more by visiting womeningovernment.org.
A hand is for reaching out and touching all you can.
Americans do what they do best. We pull together. We join hands, we lock arms, and through the tears and through the sadness, we stand strong.
This community pulls together. It doesn't matter your race, what you do for a living, male, female, what your religion or your ethnicity. If you need something, we just come together, and that's always how it's been.
Well, the haters who are just going to hate, as Taylor Swift sang, they're trashing people who say those things now. If you say you pray for the victims, you're just part of the problem because you're obviously somewhere along the line you're defending the NRA. The killer was a committed atheist, looked down upon people of faith, ridiculed people of faith, clearly had a major gripe with his ex-in-laws who attended this church. Somehow was able to buy weapons after his court-martial for spousal and child abuse. Joining us now is my friend, who is the governor of the state that's been through so much, from natural disasters now to this, Governor Greg Abbott from the Lone Star State of Texas. Governor, on such a sad day, it is still great to talk to you. Tell us what you know now. Any more details about this sick and depraved, dark-hearted individual and what we might take away from this as far as lessons and perhaps future policy implications?
Well, listen, Laura, there's a
lesson that is as old as history here, and that is the world has evil in it, and this is evil. And we've seen evil multiple times recently, whether it be a terrorist driving a truck down a bike pathway in New York, or a terrorist in London who used bombs or knives, or listen, you can go back to the early stages of the Bible and you see evil take place. And the one way to deal with evil is to rely upon God and the goodness of God. And you know what? That's exactly what I experienced last night. I was with the tremendous people of Sutherland Springs last night. I got to visit with the families of the victims in a community center. We prayed together, which was the thing they really wanted to do. They wanted to reach out and to connect with God. And then after that, we went to a candlelight vigil, where once again, the key focal point of that vigil was love, and that love will overcome evil. And this was a completely deranged individual. Devin Kelly was. Listen, you got to be deranged to kill so savagely as he did, from a young infant to people in their 70s and everybody in between. But they're clear. I think, as you intimated, this was not a random act of violence. I think he wanted to target this church because of a family connection with it. Those will be details that will be coming out here in the coming days. But this is something that we need to recognize is a component of the world in which we live. Now, you may or may not know that Devin Kelly did apply for a gun license in the state of Texas and was denied that gun license, but yet was still able to obtain a weapon. And that'll be one of the facts that we need to look into and see why and how that happened. But we need to, right now, focus on coming together and provide the support and love and strength that the people of Sutherland Springs need.
Governor, the fact that children were among the dead, a 5-year-old, a 14-year-old, including the daughter of the pastor of this community, of this church, obviously you're a father, I'm a mother. In these situations, it takes your breath away. It's both, it's disheartening, it's acknowledgement of evil, but also at the same time, as I said to my listeners earlier, Governor, we had 2 men who knew how to use a weapon and were good men, and they're also heroes here, which I think we cannot overlook.
Well, it is a fact that a good guy with a gun stopped a bad guy with a gun. I was told by the director of the Texas Department of Public Safety that the good guy with a gun, the neighbor who brought his own weapon and shot at Devin Kelly, the assailant, that the neighbor did strike him with his gun. And it was after that the assailant, Devin Kelly, dropped his gun, and then the chase ensued. What we don't know is whether or not it was that gunfire that led to the death of Devin Kelly, or if it was a self-inflicted wound. But it's clear also that there were additional weapons and ammunition in the vehicle that Devin Kelly left in, and who knows what he was intending to do after he left that church. And so it probably is true that the good guy with the gun stopped Devin Kelly from wreaking further carnage in the lives of the people in that area.
Governor, what do we know about his purchase of firearms post-court-martial that you know of? Because that I have a major problem with. Someone who's court-martialed for spousal abuse. Federal law states that he should not have been able to get a gun. So how did he?
Yeah, you're a lawyer, so you like this. It's 18 U.S. Code 922 that prohibits someone like this from being able to obtain a gun. So that there are laws in place that address the situation, and under current law, he should have been prevented from getting a gun. As I mentioned earlier, under state law and his application to the state of Texas to get a license to carry a gun, he was denied by the state of Texas. Why and how he was not stopped when he went through the federal background check, we don't know the answer to yet. That will be one of the questions, as there will be many others that we need to come up with answers in the coming days. But Right now, we're dealing with a large puzzle. We have some of the pieces to it, and we're working on providing the other pieces to it. And why and how he got this gun, we will learn. I think you may know that he purchased the gun at an Academy store, and that did require a federal background check. And how and why he was able to get past that background check, we don't know at this time.
And if indeed, Governor, we find out that he purchased these things, as you said, in the state of Texas at this store, and somehow this slipped through the cracks or was not comprehensive enough, would you support legislation that would make this background check to include court-martials and the like? Would you support legislation or measures that would tighten this up?
Well, I think that already exists. And this may be one of those situations where, once again, we don't need additional laws. We need to have current laws enforced. But before we can get there, Laura, the fact is we need to learn all the facts. Right now we're dealing with suppositions, and dealing with suppositions is not a good way to figure out what type of legal changes we need. We need to get to the bottom of the facts and find out what happened, why it happened, and what can be done about it. And so let us, here in the coming days, we're moving at great speed to make sure we get to the bottom of this. Let's do that first before we start speculating on what type of law is needed, because it may turn out that all the laws that were needed to address this currently exist, but they simply were not applied or enforced.
The American left, Governor, and I know you have to go, but the American left has seized upon this to ridicule those who say they're praying for the victims, because they then take it to the next step and they say, we're sick of your so-called prayers when you're basically bought and paid for by the NRA. You have blood-stained hands, they're saying of Paul Ryan and others, because you simply do what the NRA says. What is your reaction to that?
Anyone who says that is denigrating the families of the victims in Sutherland Springs, who themselves were insisting that their response be one of prayer to God, faith in God, looking to God to overcome this challenge. The people who are lodging these complaints need to empathize and support the families of the victims, because it is they themselves who are saying this is the time to come together and pray to God and look to God for the answer. And so I'm going to be sticking up for my constituents and the people who are suffering in Sutherland Springs and follow the pathway they are asking us to follow.
And how is Houston area doing, Corpus Christi up to Houston, Beaumont, after these floods, Governor? Still massive amounts of work needs to be done, drywall being ripped out, black mold, all the things people in New Orleans are very familiar with post-Katrina. But how are y'all doing?
Well, it's a big challenge in the area where the hurricane came onto shore, which is near Corpus Christi in the Rockport, Port Aransas area. There is still buildings that are crumbled, many buildings that are crumbled, and it's going to be a very long process just going through the rebuilding. In the greater Houston area, where there was massive flooding, there are hundreds of thousands of homes that are having to be mucked out and rebuilt. And I got to tell you, hands off to Samaritan's Purse and so many other faith-based organizations that are going in there, helping these families go through that rebuilding process. And then getting on closer to Louisiana, you do have Beaumont, Orange, and Port Arthur. That had very heavy flooding, and once again, whether it be people at the state, federal, or local level, or our great philanthropy, there are people who are coming together, working to support these people and rebuild as quickly as possible. Candidly, I tell you that there have been several uplifting moments, one of which was when the Houston Astros won the World Series. And that was a spirit lifter for everybody.
I agree. Region. I think I felt like God was smiling on Houston. I felt like it was just that is exactly what should have happened, and it did. Governor Greg Abbott, thank you so much for sharing some time with us. Another very difficult day for Texas, and it's going to be a difficult aftermath. There are a lot of people dead, and we do pray for you. Our whole family prayed for you last night, and we'll continue to do so. Governor Greg Abbott here on the Laura Ingraham Show, and I am now experiencing social media backlash for an issue that I just was informed. I apparently made a mistake yesterday on social media, unwittingly. But boy, is this community upset with me. I'll tell you when we come back. All right, tonight I'll have Paul Ryan on the Ingraham angle, so look forward to that. We're going to be talking about, of course, the left's attack on him in the aftermath of this horrific shooting in Texas. Also, this tax reform bill is getting a huge amount of criticism across the board, both from the left and the right. The right saying you didn't really simplify things. You got a 46% tax bracket hidden in there. When I saw that 46%, I'm like, single mother of 3 kids, I don't want 46% of my tax taken. No, that's a bad deal. So we're going to hopefully get that fixed. So apparently I stepped in it yesterday when I tweeted out a picture of something I saw in Tuscaloosa on Saturday. I was walking into the stadium with some buddies, and I took 3 guys from the military with me, old friend and his buddies, and they're all in training together. Amazing people, Max Kingsley and his buddies, and Maria came and Chris, and we all were walking in, and we're passing by the $1 Million Band, which is they have 500 people in the band in Alabama. It's unbelievable. And on the ground, shiny, 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 dozens and dozens, it looked like, of tubas. I thought it was a cool picture. They're all very carefully laid on the ground as they're getting ready to walk into the stadium, march in. And I tweeted a photo of it. And Elisa, what? Now people are upset at me. What are they upset about?
People are upset because those are not tubas, Laura.
Uh-oh. Whoopsie. What are they?
Those, as one of your Twitter followers says, those are saxophones.
What?
Dearest Laura.
I don't even know what a saxophone is. I'll give you a saxophone. I thought you were going to say it's a French horn or something. I don't know what it is. It looks like a tuba to me.
Technically, they are saxophones.
And what's the difference?
I think they're a little bit smaller than tubas.
Oh, fine.
And all of your followers...
I did think it was a lot of tubas.
Yeah. Well, all of your followers say that they are music performance snobs. And they're sorry, but you are incorrect.
Okay, well, I stand corrected. The saxophone versus the tuba. Well, I am an orchestral mental midget, apparently. I don't know, but it's an amazing band, and I thought it was an incredible picture. You can go on Twitter and see it, and I have some other photos up on Twitter and Facebook.
I'm looking
as well.
at the photo of a sousaphone right now.
Saxophone or sousaphone? Now you're both
S-O-U-S-A.
Sausaphone. Yeah. I thought it was sassy, like sassy phone. Saxophone.
I can easily see how you could make that mistake.
You know what they did, by the way, the $1 Million Band? They did a huge tribute to the military. They did Into the Wild Blue Yonder. They did the Air Force. They did In Formation, a plane. Then they did the Army. They did the Navy with a big ship in formation. These guys are unbelievable. It was really fun. Fun to just watch that. No one's taken a knee in Tuscaloosa, I can tell you that. You're listening to The Laura Ingraham Show. 855-40-LAURA. We have a lot more to get to. Don't touch that dial.
Thanks for listening to The Laura Ingraham Show podcast. Download new episodes every week at podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com.
Hey humans, David Smalley here from the Dogma Debate Podcast, right here on Podcast One, where we talk about all the things you're not supposed to discuss at work: religion, politics, abortion, racism, slavery, and that's only when we open the Bible. We discuss Islam, Islamophobia. What does that even mean? We chat with vegans, animal rights activists, and even visit factory farms to see it for ourselves. I invite people from multiple backgrounds to convert me into their worldview. But as long as they're okay with being respectfully challenged, you better bring your evidence. And I never lose sight of how both the left and the right are seeming to lose their minds. So basically, we're solving all the world's problems right here on Dogma Debate. And you've been missing it. Watch our 360 virtual reality videos on the Podcast One app and download Dogma Debate on iTunes, Stitcher, or PodcastOne.com.